Welcome back to another episode of The Hardcore Casual with your boy, Bass the Kid. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, and any and all in between. I appreciate it. A little bit different. It's a Sunday. Usually, this is weekend wrap time. However, there hasn't been any mainstream boxing on in the UK or the US. There was a card on, I believe, in Canada. I haven't watched the card yet, so I can't really make too much of a comment on it. Chances are there won't be a breakdown this Tuesday unless I can get a couple special guests to come through and we can just have it as like a special. But with that being said, a couple things did happen over the weekend that were worthy of talking about. So even though there was no boxing action, there's stuff to talk about. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we knew it was too good to be true, and it ended up being too good to be true. So Frank Martin has withdrawn himself from the Shakur Stevenson bout, which was scheduled to take place on a Thursday in November, and it was for the vacant WBC lightweight title. I believe Shakur Stevenson now will end up having to do negotiations with Edwin De Los Santos, who I believe is next in line. But the question is, why did Frank Martin pull out of this fight? What other fight has he now got on the horizon that is worth pulling out of a Shakur Stevenson title shot? There's only one fight I could potentially think of, and that would be a Tank Davis fight if you're on PBC, right? But I know they want to bring Tank back supposedly with the Isaac Cruz rematch. Built-in narrative, you know, the only person Tank couldn't stop, the only person that gave Tank hell. So now, can he win this fight in better fashion, or can Isaac Cruz ultimately take him out? Is that Tank's boogeyman? That's the narrative they're going to go with. So chances are it's very unlikely that that is going to be Frank Martin's next fight. So who does he fight? Ultimately, 100%, I don't know who is responsible, whether Frank pulled himself out, said, nah, I don't want that Shakur work, or whether Al Heyman advised that we're not allowing you to come off platform, we'll figure something else out for you in the interim. But Frank Martin has pulled himself out. So unquestionably, 100% it's a duck. In my opinion, it was a PBC guy realizing that top ranked guys ain't really to be messed with, especially, you know, when you're not as active as you could be, and when you've had the kind of sticky situations that you've had recently. Being 28 to 29, to be honest, this is the time where you say to yourself, well, if I take this shot and I miss, well, I'm towards a point in my career where I might not get another shot. So do I now just take this one out, take the safety road, find an easier way to a world title, and then basically make my moves from there, and then try and make my money later on in my career on the back end? Potentially, that could be how you're looking at it. But again, 100% to me, it's another case of the PBC not wanting to play well with others, especially when those others are not at a huge disadvantage. And definitely, I guess it's a case where it's not even on a PBC network. Now, if that's the case, why didn't PBC do more to bid for the fight? I mean, if with the amount of money you must have in the coffers at the moment with the impending Canelo-Charlo match, that's going to make you a return at least. You must have made a huge return on Tank Garcia earlier on in the year. Why would you not just bid for this fight? It's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. Then you can have it on home territory. Do whatever little dark arts you need to do to sort of keep Frank Martin as your prospect, or your world champion. Moving into unifications and all sorts of stuff. So it doesn't really make much sense outside of just they're scared that Shakur Stevenson is going to make one of their guys look the exact way that Terence Crawford made one of their other guys look not too long ago. The way that, if I remember it correctly, 24 other top ranked guys have made PBC guys look in the past. Yeah, it don't look good. It's it's a really bad move, basically, and I don't know how you necessarily recover from this one, and I don't know how anyone can defend it. That's what I want to hear, is how that one gets defended by, you know, the conglomerate that only serve that particular promotion. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I'll keep my ears open, and anything I hear of moving forward on both guys, I'll let you know. So it looks like Devin Haney versus Regis Prograis has been officially signed and announced to take place on the 9th of December in San Francisco. Interesting place to host the fight. I mean, I don't know how that one makes much sense. Devin is from Vegas, and I think his family, his family roots are in LA, I believe. I think his dad's from Los Angeles. And then you've got Regis Prograis, who, you know, is from Louisiana? So, or is it New Orleans? It's one of the two. But it's like you say to yourself, well, none of their fan bases are in that location. So how does that location end up being the best place to put that fight? It seems very weird. I mean, look, maybe it's just the only place you could get a venue. Cool, but that just seems strange that you're going to make both guys' fan bases travel to an alien place. And it's not like either of those guys have got a huge fan base across the entire states. So yeah, to have the fight in a place that neither of their fans reside is very odd, in my personal opinion. It's also going to be pay-per-view in the US. Now, luckily, that doesn't affect me over here in the UK. I would pay for it because I do think that fight would be worth paying for. You know, you've got the former undisputed champion at lightweight stepping up in his first fight at 140, taking on the number 2 guy in the division. I guess we've got to call him the number 2 guy. And yeah, that would be a interesting bout. Maybe it might actually be the number 3 if you give any credence to Josh Taylor beat him. Josh Taylor only lost to the number, so maybe he's the number 3 guy. Either way, he's fighting the guy that's a top 3 opponent in that division. I suppose that's how you look at it. It's not a pay-per-view fight in the slightest. I mean, Devin Haney is, I'm a really, I like watching Devin Haney. I'm not gonna say I'm a huge fan, but I like Devin. I like his career. I like the risks he's taken, and he pretty much has shown that he'll fight anyone except Shakur Stevenson at this point. But I understand the Shakur thing, because I wouldn't fight Shakur at 135 when I can barely make the weight. That's just not sensible. But I know that he will fight Shakur, especially 140, 147. So I ignore that, but I know he's a guy that has asked for fights. He's campaigned for many fights. He's been avoided by a lot of people in the past. So I like his journey. I like the story. I like his trajectory, and I like the way he does business to the most part. Like, he's getting the biggest possible bag for himself. Regis, on the other hand, is very similar in that sense. He's looking out for the bag as well. Like, he's towards the back end of his career, so he wants to be paid well. But he's also another guy that struggled and never got the fights he wanted, and was always being avoided by people up until a certain point. So I get it. But yeah, neither guy are box office. Neither guy have a big enough fan base to command that. Devin Haney's last fight on box office with Vasily Lomachenko, I think, only did, 170,000 buys, if that. Now, in this new landscape, you might say, well, that's not terrible, but I'm sure a lot of those people that bought the pay-per-view were Vasily Lomachenko fans, more so than Devin Haney fans. So if we're looking at it, what is that going to do on pay-per-view? I think that's going to be a bloodbath, quite frankly. They would have just been better off having that as part of the regular subscription, and told the guys, look, the money that you want is just unrealistic. And to be honest, if anything, call the bluff, because Devin probably can't get the money he would want from any fight now anyway, to go on pay-per-view. Like, I don't think Top Rank the only fight Top Rank will put on pay-per-view for Devin is a Teofimo Lopez fight, but that fight isn't going to happen at any point in the near future. And then obviously the zone, you got the Ryan Garcia fight, but Ryan ain't gonna fight him. He didn't want to fight him when Devin had a title, so he's definitely not gonna fight him now at 140 for nothing. But outside of those two fights, there's no other real like box office bouts for him. So I maybe would have pushed back a little bit. But that being said, look, I'm looking forward to the fight, and when it comes around, I will be staying up to watch it 100%. I'll give my opinion on it later on down the line when it is sort of like officially announced and we get up to that weekend, you know, when it comes to basis picks. I'll do all of that good stuff then. But yeah, overall, I feel bad for my, you know, for my compatriots in the States that have got to shell out probably $60 for that one on top of their subscription, which is already much higher than ours over here. But hey, them's the breaks. You either pay or you don't, I suppose. But yeah, otherwise, good fight. Glad it's finally been confirmed. And yeah, I'll wait December for further on that. Last but not least for today, there are other things to necessarily talk about, but we'll deal with that on a later date. Teofimo Lopez has been granted WBO Super Champion status from the WBO, which now means that he has privileges such as extended time between having to defend against mandatories, being the #1 next contender for the belt above or below his current weight class. So any division he goes to, he can say, I'm moving to this division, I want to be installed as the immediate mandatory, and that request kind of gets granted. I think it only allowed 2 above, and I think you can go 1 below, but I don't think they normally allow the 1 below, depending on how different the weight classes are. Not 100% sure, but I know you are allowed to jump 2 above where you currently are, supposedly. But the reason, to me, I don't like this particular move is because there's always been, from what I remember, clear criteria defined to WBO Super Champ, and that is you have to have unified a majority of the titles in your division. So that's 3 titles. Any sanctioning bodies, I don't think the IBO is included, but it's the majority of the belts, or you have to have had 5 defenses of the title, and you get elevated to super status. Now, I've never known someone to be able to petition for the super status of the WBO. I've never known that to be a thing. Now, clearly it might be in their bylaws. I haven't read the entire, sort of the entire rules and regulations of the WBO. But to me, it's like, it's a bit of a cop-out when you've got clear set criterias, like make Teo defend the belt 5 times, like everyone else had to, like Demetrius Andrade had to at middleweight to get that super champ status, or make him unify with the other champions. At this point, this whole thing looks, a lot of people say, oh well, he's gone to WBO so that he can get a fight with Terence Crawford. He's not going to fight Terence Crawford. He already knows that fight doesn't end well for him. All he's trying to do is stop having to face who's going to be the mandatory for that belt? Arnold Barbosa. Arnold Barbosa is the current mandatory, or at least is the #1, soon to be installed as the mandatory for the WBO. Teofimo Lopez doesn't want to face him, but I know that someone like Jose Ramirez, he could petition to face Jose Ramirez as well with that status, or just fight other people and basically keep Barbosa on the outside looking in. I don't know what his issue is with Arnold Barbosa. I don't know if it's just a case of he just doesn't think that's a good money fight, or he just knows Barbosa is a horrible style for him. I'm not sure what particularly it is, but he's been talking for the last 2 and a bit years about not facing Barbosa. Like, please don't put me in there with him. Like, that's a horrible fight and rare. So yeah, that must be what it is. Ultimately, like I said, I just think it's a bit bad that he's been granted status that he hasn't earned via their strict set criteria. But that being said, if it means that he then doesn't have to face that mandatory, but he does then go into a couple unifications or fight the best guys in the division as a result of it, then I guess we can let it slide. I want to see him in with a. I'll take a Jose Ramirez, even though I think Ramirez is kind of busting at the seams. He probably needs to move up to 147 at this point. But if we can get a Sulbier Matias, if we can get a unification against the winner of Haney Prograis, or Prograis Haney, I should really be respectful with the title. Or I guess maybe the winner of O'Hara Davis and Ryan Garcia, because I think that's going to be for the vacant WBA title. I think Rolly Ramirez might end up being called champion in recess soon. Not 100% sure about how all of that's going to transpire, but if he starts, you know, fighting those guys, then cool. I'll say, yeah, well, ultimately you earn that super status, but for this particular moment in time, can't agree with it. I think it's a bit bad, and I think they need to necessarily do better and not bow to the pressure of clearly the Bob father. He's clearly the one that orchestrated that. You know, him and Frank Warren have the WBO in the palm of their hands, and they just choose how they kneel and squeeze and tenderize. Let me stop. But yeah, you guys get the point. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll be back shortly with more content, but right now it's the Hardcore Casual out.